I'm Brian Stanton, host of Teaching While Queer, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
It's the High Tech Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm one of the hosts, as we've debated on here, co-host. It comes up a lot on this podcast.
We're just hosts. We're done.
It's a great way to introduce people to the podcast episode. Welcome is to say an inside joke that you won't get unless you've listened to other episodes. It's basically
Go
best
backwards.
way to start it off. Yeah, let's go back. You're the High Tech Podcast, where we talk about ed tech and lots of fun things and other topics and whatever Will and I are feeling like talking. Which, by the way, if you haven't met Will, he is also the other host that I have yet to introduce. That is
guys.
sitting with me. Hey, there he is. How you doing, Will?
Pretty good. I am
Pretty
in a
good.
new space tonight. We are at Aunt Kim's. This has been in a few episodes now. This is the corner
Yeah.
I record in when I'm not home on a Tuesday night.
Her exact address is. No, I'm just... Is that frowned upon? It's probably frowned upon. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
Are you in an egg
you know.
chair? That's the real question I have.
It is mildly eggish. It is quite comfortable, except it's quite warm. This is sweat, friends. Yes. If you're watching the podcast.
I had to ask because it was bringing back like college dorm vibes, where like here's a hot take, okay? Like there's a certain life that you live in like college, and most of it is surrounding being in like a chair that's just too low for the average human being, right? Like I feel like that's
yes,
like
that is way too accurate and scary.
Right?
I don't
feel like
it.
that's yeah. I don't. Well, I'm sorry it's warm over there. I'm actually. We have yet to take our air conditioning units out of the house because I haven't believed whether the weather was going to be
Temp's
okay.
gonna stay down.
But now, like, Sam, my wife, is gone for the week, and some of our air conditioners I can get out and some I can't. But it's like cold enough outside that like if I don't take them out soon, the house might freeze inside. I'm not sure. Like it's sometimes colder inside than it is outside. Our house is like trapping the cold air, which is why I'm wearing.
Happy with that.
Yeah, which is why I love that. But it's also why I'm wearing. So, Will, have you heard this? Have you heard this term that I have for what I'm wearing right now? Okay, so
that's
for everybody else, it's a cardigan, right?
Yes.
If you're listening and you can't see, I'm wearing like a burgundy cardigan.
A cardigan.
If you will. A cardigan.
Yes.
But me and a coworker have come to nickname them work hoodies. So
yes.
like they're like the hoodie that's acceptable at work, right? Yep. And so the joke at work has become like it's work hoodie season.
Oh,
right.
Nice
and
work
him
hoodie.
And I are like in our work hoodies.
I had two cardigans for that very purpose. Oh, I'm going to be cold at work. I'm going to take my cardigan. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Good call.
So,
good call.
There you go. New thing, work hoodies. Don't worry, we're going to monetize it for the podcast soon. The High Tech Podcast work hoodie.
Ooh, High Tech Podcast work hoodie.
That's not a horrible idea.
Let's go.
That's great. If you would wear a High Tech Podcast work hoodie, let us know on Twitter or email us in
inbox at hightechpod.us.
Yep, or wherever else you'd like. But if you know our phone numbers, you can text us too. But if you don't ask for them. Sorry. But you can
not giving it.
Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know. I want to know if you would get a High Tech Podcast work hoodie. We could figure that out. I feel like that's a thing. Yeah,
let's do it. I'd love it.
Exactly. Anyway,
it's October.
It is.
It's October in 2023, and we're recording this intro and the subsequent outro for an episode we recorded on September 14th in 2023.
Wow.
It's almost a month later.
I was gonna let them believe.
No, I can't do that.
Believe that we didn't,
Can't do that.
I thought today, I was like, as we record this intro, like I'm definitely not wearing a work hoodie in the interview. Like, it's September. It's early September. I was not.
I have to bring this up for several reasons, Josh. I just have to break the fourth wall because this episode's going to release on November 7th. So we recorded the interview September 14th. We're recording the intro outro October 10th, and the episode will release November 7th. Okay. In September, we had this interview with our upcoming guest, the wonderful Steve Miletto, where we very contentiously brought up the fact of the Braves playing the Philadelphia Phillies.
You're just gonna get there right away.
Going right to it. Going right for the throat on this one.
Sports ball!
When Steve and I were discussing the Braves and the Phillies in September, no one knew where we would be. Tomorrow night, October 11th, the Braves face the Phillies at Citizens Bank Park. The series is split 1-1. Okay, and I'm banking on it.
I don't understand.
I'm banking on the fact that when this episode releases on November 7th, the Phillies will have gone to the World Series and not the Braves. You heard it here first, Steve. You heard it here first.
Oh man,
yep. I can't wait. I can't wait for this episode to release. So yeah,
that's not good juju, man. You just put yourself in a situation. The Braves are totally going to be there now. I'm just.
I'll edit this and we'll just delete this episode if that happens. But
if you're listening right now and you heard Will go, and the Braves will be at the, it's because Will edited. It's like a completely different voice. It's like
Steve's voice saying Braves,
or it's like Siri from the iPhone. It's just like anyway. Yeah. So,
right, so who what are we actually doing with this episode? What are we actually doing? That.
Yeah. So we are interviewing today the great Steve Miletto. So for those of you who don't know, Steve is a fellow podcast host from the EDU Podcast Network. And to say that we are noobs in comparison to Steve is like not an understatement at all. Steve he'll mention in this episode like 600 episodes, right? I think he's coming up on, right? Like we're not even like halfway. We're like barely, we're not even at like a quarter of what
we're wee babs.
Yeah, we are babies that barely know what we're doing, and but we are so excited that Steve was willing to come join us. He's a great guy. He's super funny. We've been on his podcast, and he's a blast. He's a ton of experience, and I'm excited for you guys to listen to this episode. This one is an episode where it's not just the ed tech, it's not just the fun, but it's also like nerd city because Steve is a nerd to the core, like Will and I, and we get into some deep cuts in this episode. So other than when they talk about sports balls, it's whatever. It's
fine. You'll join someday. My goal for you, my friend, is someday you too will appreciate.
Oh, that's nice. My dad's been trying to do that since I was born. Let's see how that goes for you.
Amazing.
Anyway, with that said, and my childhood trauma mentioned, let's jump to Steve Miletto as we learn more about his experience in education, podcasting, and why the heck he loves nerdy movies so much. We're excited for this one. Let's jump with Steve.
Folks, if you are listening to this episode live, it is November 7th. If you're not, it doesn't really matter. But today is actually September 14th, and unfortunately, our guest, our wonderful guest, which we're very excited for everything else but this, is a Braves fan. And as a Braves fan, they beat the Phillies last night handsomely, September 13th. Well, congratulations to you, Steve, but sorry for us.
It was awesome. Woo! I'm sorry that I'm glad that you're. Well, no, I'm not glad that you're. I'm sorry that I brought it the day after we clinched and at your home field, and it was a good thing, and this was a 6-1 in a row, and all that sort of stuff, which is nice, and but it was a cool series because it was rough. We had those two games in extra innings and all that good stuff. But
I think Steve is more sorry that you're a Phillies fan than he is about the fact that that the Braves won.
Yes. Yes, he is. And just a few games here, and we'll be right back at each other. I forget
I know,
who's hosting who, but the Braves play the Phillies again in just another week or so. So,
Yeah, I have it on my calendar.
Nice. The good thing is I didn't. I mean, that would have been really bad if you said you were a Mets fan. So
oh no, we can all agree no one's a Mets fan, but it's perfectly fine.
That's now my team.
All right.
Making it my team.
Joshua Ross Swartz.
Oh, the full name.
Don't
Oh,
you
God.
dare.
Ball. Woo. Okay, sorry, I lied. I love everybody. They're all great.
That's better. You can love all of them, but you can't love the Mets or the Cowboys. Okay, you just if you're
I
gonna
agree
be-
with that wholeheartedly.
Amen. We can agree to one thing.
That's
at
why I'm a
least.
water polo fan. You know, that's everybody gets passionate about water polo.
You're correct. Yes, there's. I'm not sure.
There are 3 people that get passionate about water
Yeah.
polo,
And
and
whoever they are listening
on
to our
polo
podcast
team.
right now, and they're super angry. They're like,
Yes, exactly. They can send all emails to Will and Josh.
Inbox at hightechpod.us.
you know, actually, you go to stevemiletto.com and you find the contact area on there, and you just shoot that over.
No.
Now I need to know if stevemiletto.com is not a real thing. So, Steve, if you're
No,
looking for an
I have it
opportunity,
open on my other screen. That's why I referenced it. It's his real website.
It's Steven Miletto. It's Steven with a V.
Oh, it's Steven. See, I
Yeah.
tried to help you, but now you clarified. So
I had to clarify.
if you need to complain, StevenMiletto.com.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, there we go. But if you're not complaining, it's really StevenMiletto.com. Right? So,
Perfect.
if you're lost right now, it's because I'm trying to save myself from inundation of fans. All right, so
Again, the 3 water polo fans who are coming for you. I don't
Yeah,
think there's too much to worry about.
Yeah, but they drown people, man. They get
right, exactly. Don't get in the pool. Don't go near the water. Exactly.
avoid water. It's like you're fighting Aquaman. Just stay on land, Steve, and you're good.
You're fine. Oh, this is great. I'm very excited. We're starting with such gusto. I don't even know where this podcast is going to go. Folks, Steve is joining us. He is the host of Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast for education. Did I get all of the terms and commas and everything right there?
That sounds like a really
he's a
good advertisement right there. That was.
I'll try next time. I'll give a little bit. Steve is actually on the Education Podcast Network with us. We're very excited to have you with us today. We are going to be on one of Steve's episodes soon too, so it's just like everybody shaking hands and spending good time together. But thank you while you're a Braves fan, I'll forgive you. I'm happy to have you on the podcast today. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. It's great to be on the podcast. I appreciate it. Appreciate being here, Will and Josh. Thank you so much, and I'll forgive you for. So
there we go. Forgiveness, redemption. This is an episode with a lot of narrative. We're hitting some important points.
All we need is somebody's uncle to die, and we'll pretty much have a Marvel superhero. You know,
there you go. Exactly. Really nice.
Yeah.
Great
with that, Steve, a lot of people know you on your podcast, right? You've been doing, for those of you who don't know, right? Okay, if you're rating experience of podcasting, Will and I are far under Steve's experience and length of podcasting. So Steve has covered a lot more ground than we have. But for those listeners for our podcast who maybe haven't heard of yours, or what your background is, tell us a little bit. What's your background in education? What's your life look like? What does a day in Steve's life look like over the years?
Cool. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You got my father. Never mind.
Yeah. His father became an evil Sith Lord named Darth Vader.
No, I was, and actually, I don't know about you guys, but I was when the first real Star Wars movies were out. I went to the theater to see each of them, so we're good. Just my story of my life, right there. Never mind. So basically, I became a history teacher, and I was a history teacher, and had fun. And my whole goal in those days was I wanted to make history fun, and get kids beyond the idea of, do we have to memorize this, or get kids beyond the idea of, is this going to be on the test? No, man, this is history. Let's talk about this. Is cool stuff. I mean, you can't make this stuff up because it happened. And well, you can make it up, but
you shouldn't. Hopefully, you're not.
Exactly. But the point is that I had a blast doing that. I learned that there's a lot more to teaching than just making history fun. Started realizing that teachers are counselors, they're idea generators, they're supporters, there's all kinds of things that go with being a teacher, and I loved it. And I had a chance to work with a boss that made me start thinking that one day I wanted to be a principal, and so I took that path after 9 years in the history classroom. Became a assistant principal, which if you want to take a fun job, all right, you need to be assistant principal, where basically in my first county, they had this rule number 24 for all administrators, and rule 24 was basically anything we tell you to do. So,
oh man, that is, and some responsibilities as required, right? That's on the job
the
description.
classic line on the job description. Basically, we own you. Please do.
Exactly, and I was in 2 different schools as assistant principal. Went from a smaller school, a small setting school system, to a bigger one. Got recruited to go there, and they wanted me to do discipline. Now, if you want to be really liked, all right, all you got to do is be a high school disciplinarian, and that's the way. That's a party that'll help you at parties. It'll help you with actually it works the opposite. You want to silence the crowd. So what do you do, Steve? Oh, I'm an assistant principal at a high school, and I do discipline.
Oh,
I think I gotta go over here to get a drink or something. It's
I gotta grab a small triangle
it
sandwich.
was great to meet you. You must be a Braves fan. They just walk off.
Yes. Very nice.
I'm not going to stop. Well, so that sounds a lot like why it sounds a lot like why your podcast is teaching learning. Like you've done a little bit of everything.
Thanks. Yes, I have. And it's what's happened is, from the assistant principal to a principal, I went as a change agent. So I marketed myself to go to high schools where they needed some semblance of change, something done to change the environment. And each of those had a little different story going on, and wow. Got a lot of interesting experience out of that. If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably still do it, but I'd still want to have my little voice saying to me, "Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but in the past life you did this, and you want to do this." But had it went awesome. Met a lot of great people that I worked with, and communities, and kids, and teachers, and other administrators, and we did a lot of good stuff. After those times, I became what's known as a RESA director, and RESA stands for Regional Educational Service Agency. And I was in one in South Georgia for 8 years. And what we do is every public school belongs to a RESA. All right. And the RESAs are all about 2 words: service. Well, 3 words.
Strike that, reverse it.
Service, and there's the second word: service and support. All right. And what we basically do is our board is made up of the superintendents, and I like to explain it this way. Basically, I meet with them and give them some thoughts about things that we can provide for them and help them with, ask them questions. And then sometimes they come up with ideas and say, "Can you help me with this?" And my answer is always, yes. And then I go to my team and say, "I told them yes." So
now what?
Yes. And so before I was in South Georgia, and now I'm up in North Georgia in the mountains, and did a unique thing there, because most RESA directors stay in one place. I found out. I didn't realize that you stayed for 8 years in one, and now I'm up here in my 2nd year now. And I'm in my 37th year in public education in Georgia. So,
holy smokes.
Yeah, so I go a ways back. Matter of fact, I can tell you about the days when we first got email.
Yeah. I feel like, since you're a Braves fan, I may as well also remind you that my parents were not yet married when Star Wars came out. So I think that'll give you some insight, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Sonny. I appreciate it. Yeah.
That's really how you make your guests feel great. Be like, not only were we not born yet, but like the imagination of us existing wasn't even there.
I really kind of think I need to tell you that we did have electricity though in those days.
Wow.
I always
only
thought
a party
email
line,
came
though.
before electricity. I thought that would be.
Well, some people treat it that way. I got to tell you, it's a chicken or the egg, man. We had chicken or the egg, whichever you say that. It's interesting because I look at it over time. Because when I started teaching, we were still using overhead projectors and the film reels, the movie projectors that you put the big reel on it, and you always had a teacher know how how to load it properly. So as it's being shown, it would start spooling on the floor, which was awesome. And so if you wanted to get extra credit or be, in their good graces, you volunteered to be the AV guy for the classroom. Now that also will get you lots of friends and party invitations, by the way. But
Steve, it's sounding like you've had a lot of time with a lot of friends and a lot of parties in your career.
He always had his way into the club, It was either AV or being the disciplinary person.
Exactly. Heck, it's funny because my high school, my senior year of my high school graduation. All right, boy, that's really screwed up what I just said. The year I graduated from high school. How about we try that one? I wasn't into prom. All right, they had some special deal where got 2 tickets for $6 a piece. $6, by the way.
Dang.
And I was like, that's no deal. I mean, it just cost me $12. That's just what the heck. And anyway, so I went to with a bunch of friends, and we all went and had an anti-prom party. And I think that by attending that party, we were in the middle of a big field, by the way. There's cows off in the distance, and we had this big bonfire going and telling jokes and playing music and all this stuff. And but what's funny though is that it was fun. It wasn't prom, but it was fun. And we had I have to add this, by the way. One of my friends worked for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the manager heard that we were having this party, so he cooked up a bunch of chicken. So we had fried chicken and sodas, and it's cool stuff out in the middle of nowhere. And
this sounds better than prom.
Yeah,
for me it was. And what's funny though is I think that night the powers that be said, Steve goes to this anti-prom party. Therefore, one day he will be the principal of a school and be responsible for making sure that prom is good. And homecoming dance, by the way. No. Oh, that was one of the fun things. So, all right, that was a long story to get to that point.
Amazing.
It's hilarious.
No, I love it. I love it. I don't have any better segue. So, you've got episode.
Braves. That's what it is, right? Never
say again.
So you changing sides? You're going to the Braves? So, never mind.
No, never.
Just wanted to throw that in there. It sounded like you were.
Yeah,
it was a nice try.
That was clearly the next words that were coming out of his mouth. I can understand it, Steve. Yeah.
I can't. It's true. Well, see, I started it on the recording, but you started it before the recording. So who will know? Who will know? You've got episode 596 out for your podcast as of today. Holy smokes!
Thanks. This is cool.
What in the heck motivated you to start it? And when did you start it?
November of 2013, I started it. Yes, and
my parents were married at that point. Just to say,
thank you. I appreciate you hearing that because that was really going to scare me then.
I was still in college, but they were married. There, sorry, I had to add that.
I just want you to know that came from your co-host. We had, what's funny? I totally lost it. I know I was going someplace. What started me in the podcasting world? That's right.
Yeah.
So I had, as a principal, I had wanted to do a podcast. I started listening to them. Some teachers shared some different podcasts that were going on, and I started listening to some of them. And I thought, this is cool. This would be fun to do. But then part of me was going, I'm going to say something stupid, and then I made somebody angry or something because no principal ever makes anybody angry, right? It's always calm, always
zero principal.
They're known as everybody's favorite person. Yeah,
right, exactly. Just liked by everybody, and so I just kind of put that off and just listened to them and just thought this would be cool. Well, when I became a RESA director, I discovered that all right, this might work well because one of our jobs is service and one of our jobs. I tell you 2 things. Once again, 3 words: service and support. And I realized that I could do a show that's about creating shows that help classroom teachers and building administrators. And that's where the idea came from. And by the way, the long title came from, in those days, they were telling you to stick as many words into the title as you possibly could. And that's what I found. And now people are going, you don't need to do that anymore. And it's like a little late because now I'm getting this close to 600. It's like, oh, well.
You can't stop.
No, not at all. And it's addictive now. So, but that's where the idea came from. And I started doing it. And by the way, I got to say another thing. In those days, there were lots of people who were trying to sell you these packages of equipment and things like that. And I'm like,
Yep.
I can't do that. I don't have that much money. And some of them were trying to charge you like $2,000 and stuff like this. And I'm like, and they had these real fancy names that told you they were an expert on podcasting. I'm like, yeah. I need to go find a kid who's doing this. And actually,
Yes.
I found a couple kids on YouTube that were doing it. And then what's cool is I went to check this out. All right. This will get you lots of attention at a party also, especially if it's not people who like this. I go to a comic convention, and
Yes.
as you're entering in, and by the way, I was dressed as Fred Flintstone because that got me in free. So
Even better.
That's awesome.
like, and, and I see these guys as you're entering in because they have all these vendors there and stuff like this. And there's these two guys and they're having a blast. They're talking to each other. They got the mics going and they're talking. And I went, that's for me. All right. That's what I want to do. And that really kind of inspired me to take the next level. And I ended up watching what other people do. And I started off with a handheld, one of those little handheld recorders type things.
Yeah.
And I graduated to USB mics, eventually one that plugged XLR mic that plugged into an interface. And then I got this, a bunch of years later, I end up with this really cool thing made by Rode that we're not sponsored by it, but unless you are, I'll mention it. But
I wish. No.
If they're listening, we could be, Rode, if you want to jump in,
we're open to that. Look at this. You got all of it.
Inbox at hightechpod.us.
Yeah.
Come on over.
Don't
Rode.
go to
Let us know.
StevenMiletto.com. That's for complaints. If you're a sponsor, go to inbox at hightechpod.us.
Dang. And then helped me make my sound better, and it helped me be able to do some cool things. And all this time, I use freeware for editing. I use Audacity, and that's been very good. And Zoom recording, and in the beginning, I used Skype. Skype was a trip, all right, and especially because people would get the little link from you, and they go, "What do I do with this thing?" And you go, "You're killing me, man." you just click on it, all right. So when I switched to Zoom, it was a lot easier. This is not, by the way, we're not sponsored by Zoom either, are we?
Nope. No hashtag no sponsors on this podcast.
So the point is that over those years, I have a little shelf of equipment I no longer use, and I have
The museum of moving through.
Yes, exactly. So, so that's how it's grown over the years. And I started off not knowing what I was going to ask. Basically, should I do a script and read it? And so that's what I started off doing. And I really quick realized that those podcasts would be like 5 minutes if I could make it 5 minutes. And
Yep.
Yeah.
and then I started doing a combination of me talking with interviews. And today it's almost primarily interviews, and it's been fun. So, but
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Hey, you're just giving us hope for what we can do. We're this is going to be 120, a couple 24.
Yeah, 124. It's kind of like 500, but like a lot of numbers difference.
7. Okay, so geez, there's some of them that haven't gotten to 7 yet. All right, so you're doing good.
We're on our way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I've listened to them. Fun. So
appreciate it. Now, Steve, I'm curious for you. Obviously, you have your. I think Will and I experience this too, right? It's interesting when you're doing a podcast that's very connected to your work as well. Like your podcast isn't your main job; you're doing something else, and it connects into your work. How have you found kind of integrating your podcast work into your daily work? Have you found ways that they've kind of connected and worked well together? That you're like, oh, this was great. This happened at work, and I was pulled into the podcast, or vice versa, that type of stuff.
Yeah, what's really cool is that I interview book authors and people in the ed tech industry and stuff like this all the time, and sometimes it just fits perfectly. And so I reach out to some of my staff or some of the people I work with, and in some cases, I actually reach out and hire some people. I reach out to some of my guests and say, "Hey, would you come do a speaking engagement with us?" And
Oh, cool.
and it works tremendously. It's really cool because my network has gotten it's cool. It's just the different people. I mean, I've never been to Australia, but I now believe if I went to Australia, I got at least 10 people that I could reach out to and say, "Hey, I'm here," and then I hear the sound of them running away. But
The disciplinarian is here.
yes, exactly.
They know you're there. I'd rather people run away from me than not know that I'm here. Yeah,
At least they're reacting.
Yeah, you're getting a reaction.
But it's cool because you have people all over the world that listen to these podcasts, and you never realize it until you start looking at your numbers and you go, oh my gosh, look at that. And it's the neatest thing because how would I get to know them otherwise without going there? And
Yeah.
I don't have no connection to them, and now I have connections. And even though they might say, yes, it's that guy again, get away from us. But,
You just send those ones to stevemiletto.com, not Steven, and you'll be fine. I remember when Josh and I started the podcast, I like seeing the data, but Josh cares about data. He does all that for us. And he'd be like, dude, we have a listener in Turkestan or something, I don't even know. I'm like, what? And then, months later, we've got some in the UK, and all of a sudden, like, you don't know if they're bots or humans. You hope they're humans, but like, we've got people listening to us all over the place. It's pretty stunning when that happens. You're like, okay, hopefully they'll show up and they don't turn us away.
Nice. And it's one of those things that when you sit there and go, this is cool. I don't know if you've used one of those not devices, but one of those apps that keeps track of your podcast in other countries and so forth. And it's kind of cool to look at. The one I'm thinking about right now is Chartable, and somebody's bought it out. I forget who it is, but
Typical.
Yes, exactly. And what's cool though is that they'll give you a list of where it's being listened to the most, what number, and what's cool is what number you are. So like in this country, I'm like 6,100 and so on in the education area, but in this country, which I'm not sure I've heard of, I'm at 150. So it's like, nice. I'm going to advertise that from now on. It's like,
that reminds me of a time where Josh, being a participant in a band, was like on the top ratings in the Philippines or something.
Yeah. So I was Steve, a little, this is about you, but I'll give the context of the story because I don't know if I've told this on the podcast before. I was in a band for several years before I went off to college, and we were trying to take it very seriously. And somehow some radio station in the Philippines found one of our songs and really liked us. And we get this call from this Filipino guy explaining that we've been number one on their chart for 6 months on their radio station, like over bands that are like huge in America, like massive touring artists. It was only one radio station, but it got to the point that they called us and had us do like you're listening to blah, blah, blah. Like this is like so-and-so from this band. So it was a brief period. It felt cool for like a hot moment.
The flash in the pan.
Yeah, it was a good time.
That's awesome. How many other people can say they're number one? You don't have to finish everything. But
yeah, you have to explain that it was one out of like a billion radio stations in the Philippines.
Right. Exactly. That data is really cool because you look at it and you go, it's really neat when you see that there's somebody listening to you in some of these places, like the where my platform is. They have a data with a big map, and so you can actually click on the different places, and it the darker it is, the more there are there in that color, whatever the color is they're highlighting. And if it's blank, obviously there's nobody there, but it's a cool thing because you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I got like 13 people listening to me in Iran.
Okay.
It's like, are they?
I wonder how I found them.
Yeah, I know. How do we do that? But it's like in a couple other countries. I know some of them reached out to me that were in Japan. They were teaching English, and
that's awesome.
Okay.
And I thought that was cool. They were from
That's very cool.
They're from the Southeast in the United States, and so they thought it was cool because of where I'm from in Georgia.
Yeah.
By the way, but I started to say Georgia, the home of the Braves.
I don't have a kick button anywhere, do I? Is there a? Josh and I are just going to finish this interview.
Listeners, you might hear like blank moments, like Steve said a word and it's just gone. That's probably because Will edited Braves out of the entire podcast. Just like, or Will, you really want to get him back? You take out Braves and you replace it with just you saying Phillies.
Nice. Yeah, that is a problem with who has control of the editing feature.
Yeah.
Don't tempt me, but that sounds like it would take way too long just to get a good ribbon.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Just know when you talk about learning stuff, it's funny because for the longest time I had never had to deal with somebody actually doing something I might have to decide whether to cut or not, and things because of can I start again and that type of thing. That's not. But I don't mean that. I mean when you go, whoa, okay, I might need to get an R triple R rating as a result of that tirade you just went on. So it's gone. Just keep on going, and then later it's gone. And that was an interesting. The power of the edit is neat. So
Yeah, very useful tool. When we were on your podcast, Steve, it became quickly evident that we all love very similar nerd lore. You can see all of Josh's stuff. If listener, if you're not seeing Josh's background of Star Wars everywhere,
pretty much.
you will know. But is there something? This is just one of those, like, let's do a little personality buzz. Is there something you're reading right now? Something in the nerddom that we should share with the world?
Cool. So just a little bit ago, I finished reading, because I'd never read anything in the Terminator world, and one of my all-time favorite authors is Timothy Zahn. He writes all the Star Wars stuff, and he's awesome. By the way, Timothy, if you're listening, I'd be happy if you want to sponsor my podcast. Anyway,
well done. You can find him at stevenmiletto.com. Steven with the N.
There we
Pop
go.
in there and then go to hightechpod.us. We're also open if you just want to jump in on the whole education podcast network. I feel like you.
There you go. And and so I've read all his Star Wars stuff, and I continue to. He created a character called Thrawn that is really awesome, and I continue to read him. And then I noticed that they were that last movie that came out about called Terminator Salvation. They had all these pretty famous authors in science fiction world writing a book, like a prequel to that movie. And his was called Terminator Salvation from the Ashes. And I had not read that. It came out in 2009, so I'm not really up to date on some of these things, but I just read him. It was pretty cool. It was, it's Terminators walking around killing people and, doing what they do. I've really gotten into recently now. At any time I need to, I kind of refresh myself on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, by the way.
Respect. That's a tip my hat to you. A good thing to do, sir.
Thank you. There's nothing better than, because it's too bad Douglas Adams is not alive today, because his stuff fit back in the 70s and his stuff fits today, and all these in between time frames when he makes fun of our society about different things that happen. And my all-time favorite one that has a place in today's world is, we talk about how wonderful AI is, and it annoys the heck out of all the characters in the Galaxy.
And it hates itself, like the sentient robot. And
it eventually gets depressed about itself. Yeah.
And that's exactly where I'm going with this, because think about it. His name's Marvin, and Marvin, the paranoid android, and he has this line. Now I'm going to screw it up. My son would probably tell me, "Dad, you always get it wrong," but it goes something like this: a brain the size of a universe, and they asked me to go get the trash or go get the trash. And all you think is people working with AI going, "What should I ask it? What should I ask it? Can you make me a cup of coffee?" Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't forget your towel. So,
you're not wrong. We built these giant, even just the AI we have now, we built these giant language models. And what's like the most common thing I use it for? It's like, summarize this meeting. Like, nice. If it was actually sentient, could you imagine being like literally, I can generate any content you want, and you want me to summarize these 7 bullet points? You monster! What is wrong with you?
I'm doing a lot of asking it how to say no nicely and how to say thank you in a better way than what I normally do. It's great ideas, but yeah, exactly the same thing you're talking about, which is like, it would be looking at me going, "Come here, I'm going to smack you if you ask me that again."
See, now I'm just gonna anthropomorphize ChatGPT as Marvin. That's forevermore. I'm gonna see ChatGPT as Marvin.
Like totally different to me right now. Like there's now that we've had this conversation. For context, Steve, I've been generating avatars for some stuff that Will and I are working on. So we got access to Midjourney, the AI kind of photo generator, cool. And that thing can generate like beautiful landscapes, like Lord of the Rings style backgrounds. And I'm like, PNG white background. White guy with like jacket. Enter. Like minimalist illustrated. Give it to me. Like that's.
So you're going to be responsible for it becoming sentient eventually, because it's going to reach out. You stop asking me these questions like that. I can answer. I can fix all these things. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. But it fits so well with these stories, and I think it's funny because lots of people were so disappointed when they got their smart speakers and they realized that it's not like the computer out of Star Trek. And for those of you who don't know, there was an original Star Trek with that's Kirk and Spock. I didn't know if I had to explain that to you guys or not, but
No.
We're hip to the lore, okay?
Yeah, we got it. We
weren't there when the dark magic.
I've went back. Yeah, I've went back to all the places.
I'll drop one for you. We weren't there when the dark magic was written, but we know the dark magic, as Aslan would have said.
Gotcha.
I just love the circles we get to go in as this podcast, because we love ed, we love tech, but like there's so much that comes into it from just shared interest when you start talking to educators. Like I don't think we've talked to one educator who doesn't like either video games, high fantasy, just general nerdery, is into streaming or something. Like we're all just,
it's almost like we
nerds.
all didn't get into the parties and we were like, well, we'll just create our own through podcasts, like we're like,
that's it. Exactly. That's it. Oh my gosh, that's it. Because the other thing that I like reading are books where bad guys do bad stuff and the bad guys die. All right, and I think that comes out of that world too. It's like if you don't know, one of the writers is Lee Child, who writes Jack Reacher, and that's one of my favorite. Yeah. There's a new one called a character named Peter Ash that's kind of in that vein also, but that's kind of fun. So, but those all happen on Earth. They don't happen somewhere else.
Extraterrestrially.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I think is so powerful, even about the movies like Extraction on Netflix with Chris Hemsworth. You wonder, like, how many more times can we see this white knight, trash through 300 guys with bigger guns than him and save the one person by like the hair's breadth. And then I watch the movie, I'm like, as many more times as you want to. Let me just hit play again.
Exactly. I like that stuff. Good stuff. The it's there's just so many different things. I'm trying to find the first book in a series of Star Wars called Legacy of the Force, which I think is based on a game. And I've gotten a bunch of the books, but for some reason I can't find the number one. And because I got to use bookstores to buy them, not online, because I could find it online, but I'm trying to do the used bookstore things. By the way, so there's no streaming there, there's no downloading there, and but so that's the other world that I'm kind of working into. Yes.
Yeah. Very cool.
Love it.
So that's our nerdery. There's another level that this nerdery plays out, right? Is in the tech that we use in education, right? So I think this is probably why a lot of us get into liking ed tech. We're the like we were AV Club, and we're like, you may have not invited us, but I have all the power now. So I'm curious, Steve. The obviously big thing for our podcast is we're all about the ed tech and talking about the apps and things that people can use. I'm curious, what's an ed tech app that you've been excited about that you've really liked getting into recently?
So this is going to sound crazy because it's not like this. Well, it is a super fantastic thing. I don't even know how to describe it, but lots of people use it. It's just that it's so fantastic, the levels that you can get to in what you can do with it. And it's called it's this program called Canva. And
okay, yep.
I love that, man. It's like you can. Next thing you know, and what's really cool is it thanks you and rewards you for doing a lot of stuff on it. But it's really, it's amazing how many different, you can use the different modules, the different templates, and then next thing you know is it's got new templates that you can use. And so forth. By the way, we're also not sponsored by Canva.
Nope. Hashtag no sponsors here.
If we were to get sponsored by Canva, it would have happened at this point on the High Tech Podcast, because
they were our first episode.
Yeah, they were our first episode. We talked about them, and then our 100th episode, we did the Strava Canva event, which was we brought in a handful of people who use Canva and talked about it a bunch. But we are avid Canva users. Specifically, I am an avid Canva user as well, Steve. So I can be there with you. And you're right; they've gotten into this. If anybody from Canva is listening, I also appreciate what Steve is mentioning, which is basically like they've gotten into this fun thing where they like will tell you how many designs you've made, and they'll be like, "Good job! Like you're a pro designer." And you're like, "Yeah, I made a lot, but you didn't like look at them, did you? Because they're not as great as you think they are."
That's like great to put on your website too, by the way. That would be Steven Miletto.
Well, I think I heard that wrong. The bravesuck.com. What was that?
don't listen to him.
You-
All right.
You could create hypothetically like a Go Braves, thing through Canva if you wanted to.
Yes, that would.
Yeah, that would be something you could create.
My first media. It says he's the number one Braves fan, and he's a voice, one of the voice talents behind High Tech, podcast.
If you needed Steve, I've got plenty of PNGs of Will saved in my Canva. I can just share them with you. You just
That's dangerous. That's dangerous. I'm gonna have to keep you two apart. All right, nobody gets each other's emails.
Nice. I got to say this because a bunch of years ago, when Chipper Jones still was playing with the Braves, and when they go play the Mets, there was a bunch of Mets fans that they found out that his real name is not Chipper. His real name, he's named after his dad. His dad's named Larry. And so there's all these fans in the stands that would go, Larry. And a lot of times it just inspired him to hit a home run. So it didn't really work that way. But you miss those days, though. It was a cool thing. It's like, I have to say this. I've gotten a lot of, I've discovered that I really respect Bryce Harper, but he was fun to boo for a while. And it's not as much fun anymore because I've learned all the stuff he does. So it's cool. But
Yeah.
Anyway, but so at some point you're going to start rooting for the Braves, right?
No,
No,
not at all. No, I mean, I'll respect players that are worth respecting, but we need to find those. Hey, all tongue in cheek. I appreciate you being able to have a laugh with us there, Steve. I'm not as hardcore as that may seem. I like the Phillies, but I just appreciate a good game, right? And the Braves definitely put on a good show these last few nights, where we try to show up in the ninth inning usually, and then you still just put the nail in the coffin in the 10th and 11th. So
those
good
are
for you
good
guys.
because I'm a little high energy when it comes to having to deal with games that go into the 10th inning. It's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And my wife usually will send me out of that room.
Go to the other TV.
Yeah, exactly. Go to another one. You're not staying here, man. But the cool stuff. I do have to say that it's neat to have rivalries like that, though, because it's there's a lot of people that just don't like each other in this world, and it's
I think I've ended up liking you more because we can now connect about this. So it works. It works. Your team stinks, but it works. They don't.
Bring it in full
They categorically don't, though, because they have like one of the highest records in the league right now. So good
cool
for you.
that it's like
you guys.
But good stuff. So and now what's going to happen is when you edit this, you're going to go through and everything's going to be about you're going to hear the we're going to hear.
We're just going to cut everything else and just leave all the baseball talk. That'll be the episode.
That would be funny. Cool.
Thank you for taking the time with us, Steve. We definitely appreciate it. Hopefully this isn't the last time across both of our podcasts, but thank you for taking the time with us today. And Josh and I are going to do a little bit of debrief here in just a second.
That sounds good, and it's been great catching up and talking with you guys, and look forward to hearing it and sharing it out to the rest of the world. And this has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve, thank you. Wonderful conversation.
Will partially means it after all the sports ball stuff.
Well, you're a Braves fan, so we can't be friends, but I do appreciate you as a human being. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
No, it was really awesome.
That's real. I'm just
Talk to some of my friends, they might believe that, but Philadelphia, we're just Philly fans. We're just rowdy, okay? It's Bryce's house. We have to respect it.
That makes so much sense.
Steve got to spend this time with us talking about not only why he got started, seeing people doing kind of the early days of podcasting to what it's been like to be a podcaster for so long and talk to so many different folks. And I'm even looking at some of the episodes he's had most recently, like literally episode 605 is him talking with like the author of a book. Like, how cool is that? It's Chariots in the Sky by Larry Freeland. Like, he just talks to so many cool people. He does so many cool things with his podcast, the Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 podcast. And I love that he was forthright with us about it. So why was it named that? Well, they said back in the day, you should just have as many words in your podcast title. That is he started this thing in, I don't even know what he said, 2014, probably even earlier than that.
It was earlier than that, I think.
He's like, this is literally, he made the rules for podcasting, today that's like SEO, make sure you have your meta stuff tagged and your descriptions written well, and just let the AI do it for you or whatever. But back then he's like, no, I'm going to call it Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12. I want all of those things to be in my podcast. I just love that. So big kudos to you, Steve, for getting so far with it, but also being out there to impact other educators, other people in this field to help, that's what we're all trying to do, is help pull each other along, provide that extra motivation to do, I think, what's such a beautiful and passionate work that is teaching and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I think what's cool about Steve's story, and we had the advantage of hearing a bit of this when he interviewed us for his podcast as well. We were kind of doing some cross interview pieces, and I forget, is our episode even released on his podcast yet? I forget.
I don't know.
I don't think so, right? We're so out of order on where we recorded things there for a brief period. But the thing that I love about Steve is that like his career has been mostly just him going, I don't know how to do that, but I guess I'll figure that out for you.
Right.
You don't have it. Like, and he figures out ways to do stuff and ways to serve people and ways to help students, and even his acknowledgement of, he's like, everybody's favorite person being the principal, like but like, I don't know how you don't like Steve. Like he just is excited to be teaching people and helping people, and I think that's super cool, and it's an inspiring attitude that a lot of us could look to and go, maybe we should be a little bit more like Steve. Maybe we should be a little bit more positive like Steve, and jumping in there, and I appreciate it.
But none of us will have that deep, booming, rich voice of his. Man, I wish.
That's why he's been. I like to believe. I forgot to ask you this in the interview, Steve. So if you're listening to this, this is my new theory about you that I'm just going to start perpetuating. So beyond just asking people to email you if they have complaints, I'm going to just tell people that you didn't sound like that your first 100 episodes. That was like, after so many episodes, Steve's voice just got deeper. Like after he hit like 300, his voice was just like podcast voice.
Boom, podcast voice.
But Steve, we really appreciate you being on, man. It was super cool to hear your experience and the way you're influencing education and bringing people together. I think that's another thing about Steve's legacy and what he's doing, is that he's looking to bring people from all different backgrounds together to educate and lead and mentor people, and I think that's super cool. I think his desire to kind of just experiment, check things out, his curiosity is something that for me is inspiring. Right? It's an interesting way to go about a life, and I think it comes out in Steve's perspective and the way he just tries podcasting and the way he does what he's doing in education. Like if we learn anything from Steve about teaching, it's just be curious about it, right? Jump into it, and be willing to just kind of like try things, and I think I need to hear that just as much as anybody else, like who loves my structure and planning as I'm getting ready to teach. I need to also be willing to just kind of like jump in and try stuff and do stuff. And I think for me, Steve kind of inspired me a little bit to do that a bit more.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Again, folks, check out the Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 podcast from Steven Miletto. You can find that at the Education Podcast Network. That is edupodcastnetwork.com. Our podcast is up there. All the podcasts are up there. Chris Nessie is the head of the EDU Podcast Network. His podcasts are up there. Behind the Mic, podcast about podcasts. Wow, pretty meta, is all up there. So we just taking this time to lift up Steve and promote this network of folks. And we like our podcast. We like their podcast. We want folks to find material that's useful for them and that can help you in your classroom. So please do check all of that stuff out. Thanks again, Steve. This has been episode 124. We're on our way to 600. We're trying. We'll get there hopefully someday, Steve.
Yeah. Tomorrow, episode 600 releases. We figured out a hack. Fun podcast hack. If you want to get to episode 600, just skip all the other numbers. You know?
Yeah.
Who makes these rules
Amazing.
that you have to go in order, you know?
Exactly. Next episode, though, will hopefully actually be 125. We'll be featuring a conversation on how to improve your course, right? So Josh and I, that's what we do, like in everything. Every time we look at a course, the conversation is usually to improve it. We want to kind of bring some top tips, ask those questions. What could you do? When should you improve your course? Stuff like that. Yeah. We'll be promoting the app Figma, which is very popular right now. Figma for Education is free. We'll get into the details on what it is, how to use it, why we think it's pretty awesome.
And what Figma means. No, I'm just joking.
There will not be a history of fig trees, though. I'll let you know that. I already vetoed that idea
discussed
in the episode. It was discussed.
I'm going to make it happen. You better bet that episode's opening with me reading.
He's going to set himself a Notion task. I promise you, folks.
I'm going to remind myself.
As always, find us on Twitter, YouTube, all the socials. Twitter and YouTube is at High Tech Podcast. Threads, Instagram, some of those are at High Tech Pod. Email us, inbox in MySpace. Please go. That's your task. You can go make us a MySpace, then I'll use it. I'll run it, but you make us a MySpace. We should
have Tom on the podcast.
That exists. Tom. Email us, inbox at hightechpod.us, right? If you want us to do something that we told you earlier in the episode, I don't remember what it was, but email us there. Maybe we'll do it.
Tell us if you want High Tech Podcast work hoodies.
Work hoodies.
Work hoodies.
And head over to our website, hightechpod.us. Please share the website with anybody who might benefit from our episodes, our episode pages. Every single episode has an episode page where we talk about the app and other information that's going on. This episode will feature information about Steve and his podcast, where to find the Education Podcast Network, all of that stuff. I may not have a podcast voice, but I have a podcast conclusion speed, and it is fast. Forgive me for that. Thank you again for joining us another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom with others just like us, whether it's online or in person. Until next time, folks, we will see ya.
See ya.